Welcome to Talent Thrives Here, the podcast where we sit down with people behind the people. I'm Lance Lafort, an entrepreneur, a talent executive, and a search firm owner. Each episode, we talk to managers, leaders, and team builders who are shaping the future of work. One conversation, one decision, one person at a time. Because great teams don't just happen, they're built, nurtured, and led by people who understand that management isn't just about hitting targets, it's about unlocking potential. And with all the disruption of many legacy markets and workflows, leading people through the noise and confusion has never been harder. So whether you're leading your first team or your 50th, join us as we explore what it really takes to help talent thrive. Our special guest today, Tony Matthews, a leader who spent 2 decades building teams most of us would dream about. Tony's been called a maestro of collaboration. And when you look at his career, you understand why. He's scaled creative and technical teams across animation studios from Disney to Dreamworks, from Toronto to Shanghai to Abu Dhabi and Ireland. He's co-produced major animated features, helped launch new studios from the ground up, and consistently been the person brought in to get derailed projects back on track, on time, on budget, and better than expected. But what makes Tony especially interesting for our conversation today is how he thinks about leadership in moments of transformation. He recently gave a talk called Fear and Loathing in the Age of AI, Leadership Lessons for a Changing Workplace. And that title alone tells you he's not afraid to name the tension so many managers are feeling right now. Because here's the thing. Tony doesn't just manage projects, he builds culture. He connects people to purpose. And he believes that great results come from great relationships and systems that serve people, not the other way around. Tony, after all of that, welcome to Talent Thrives Here.
Thanks so much, Lance. Thanks for that introduction. It makes me want to be me.
Excellent. Oh, well, thanks for joining us. I'm just curious. You've seen so much that's in flux right now, and unless someone's living under a very big rock on a tiny island in a big hole somewhere, everyone's getting the sense that nothing is sort of the way it used to be. There's no status quo anymore. Much is changing. Would you agree?
Oh, much is changing. Oh, yes, absolutely. I think I think one of the things that's interesting is so much is changing right now. It's not one of those situations where there's a big economic turn down or a disruption in one area. It's kind of going everywhere. Um, I talked to people about a party I was at, literally, about a year ago, and met some people I didn't know them before, and it's like, oh, wonderful to talk to. Got to the what do you do, and I'm saying, well, I work in animation, and oh, that's exciting, that's wonderful. It's a fun conversation at that point in time, and then the question comes up. It's like, what do you think about AI? What's it going to do to your industry? It's like, oh, well, if I were having this conversation with you, I'm like, well, I'd be looking at different tools and I'd be sort of, no, 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 no. I have a friend who works in the creative industry and it's all changed. They're all gone. Well, I'm not sure what the specific industry. No, no, no. What used to take 11 people for a shoot with writers and designers and decorators is now done by some guy at a computer. They're all gone. What are you going to do with your job? I'm like, well, I'm sure they have certain. No, no, it's all gone. You're losing your job. What are you going to do? And at that point, it was what I'm going to do is get another drink because this is getting insane. But the reason I use that story is we've all probably had that conversation, and some of us have even started that conversation.
Right.
And as bad as it can be with someone you meet at a party, the problem is we're getting a lot of CEOs doing that. We're getting people at the top of the ranks going, because the pressure is coming so far, so fast. What is happening? And people are already playing short-term games and they're having to play shorter and shorter term games. There's so much uncertainty that, what are the people who run the company supposed to do? What metrics do they follow now?
Yeah.
So yeah, everyone who builds efficiency and builds you know capability generally builds that on certainty.
Right.
tell me what the next quarter, tell me what the next year is going to look like, and we're going to make it better because we can be more efficient. Well, right now, there's uncertainty everywhere with AI, with organizations, with the world trade is changing,
Yeah.
and that's just where it is. So, yeah, there's a lot going on right now.
Yeah, I keep seeing, I keep reading about things where people overhired post COVID, because after COVID sort of settled out, there was a rush in a lot of industries to get back to market, hire like crazy. For me, I remember I tracked certain job boards, and all of a sudden we started seeing vice president talent acquisition being hired all over the place, which is, to me, that's a signal they're getting ready to build a talent act team. They're going to start lots of hiring. And
Yeah,
um, and so I literally remember like a week or two after the vaccines, you could see like Amazon, Google, all these people were starting to hire global talent acquisition teams. And I thought, oh, everyone's getting ready for the next battle of hiring people. And then, short term, maybe 18 or 24 months later, it was like they all started doing corrections and
yeah.
letting massive, and I think we're still seeing that. There's, layoffs going. So, yet in the middle of all that, I saw some people hiring in the last few months too. So, but there's been waves, I guess, if I could say that. There's been a wave
No,
and
I,
then
I
a
like the
trough.
word you used, corrections, because
Yeah.
uh, it- I've been around long enough to see waves when an industry goes up and then it goes down, but it's going to be back in 2.5 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And now it's not as predictable because
Right.
so much is changing. Um, and it's not that everything is going away, it's that it's coming back looking different.
Yes.
So it,
Yes.
it really is adapting to what's coming up now. So it's a readjustment.
Yeah. And it feels to me like we've had roughly if you think of the late 80s and early 90s, desktop publishing, the Macintosh computer, all the software we use today started around then. We've had about a 30-year cycle of
Yeah.
advancement, innovation, as it hit the animation world, the visual effects world, everything that kind of was physical effects that went digital. Um, but the tools were getting better and better and better. And what's happened now is the tools, this advent of AI it's a radically different tool set. And so, yeah, I think the disruption's almost like it was when the computer started, when it hit physical effects versus CGI. It's
Yeah.
that kind of big, fairly large shift. And I think it'll take a few years before companies and industries go, okay, here's the new tech, and let's start another. I don't know if it'll last a 20 or 30-year cycle again. I think that's not the way tech works nowadays.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's moving much quicker. Things are innovating sort of like in snapshots every 6 months or 6 weeks sometimes. But
Yeah.
um, I watched you had a YouTube video up from one of your talks, and I really enjoyed it. And a couple of things that stick in my head is you mentioned Amy Webb's FUD, and the other
Yeah.
one was there was a comment how to get the best out of people when everything is changing, and you
Yeah.
also mentioned the big buy-in. So for people that haven't seen your talk, I wonder if you could hit some highlights on those things, the FUD and the
Yeah.
big buy-in and so on. That'd be great.
No, the Amy Webb is amazing, and I'm going to get the title wrong, but effectively kind of a futurist. She helps industries look ahead and see what's coming, and she does a big report at South by Southwest every year. And maybe it would be not this past one, but the one before. She came out with just a huge industry uh, exploration into what's coming. And one of the things she brought up is so many people, specifically CEOs, are suffering from FUD, fear,
Mm.
uncertainty, and doubt. And that's literally what we just talked about before. The same thing that's going on is they don't know what's going to happen. They don't know what, you show up one day, you read a piece of news that says your opponents have eaten you for lunch and you don't even know what it is they're eating. It's it's really shaken up the ability for people to feel settled, to feel like their plan makes sense.
Mm.
um and and my I've dealt with that type of a feeling a lot in my career and in uh, my world. It's to me, that comes from change and uncertainty. Things come up, things change. Things change when you expect them to, things change when you don't expect them to. Um, it's easy to say people hate change. I think people like change. It's just uncertainty can be really uncomfortable. And
Right.
if you're have a lot of people relying on you and you have a lot more uncertainty, the level of discomfort's got to be astonishing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've dealt with change. I actually have a degree in aerospace engineering. I worked in the space station program for like 8 years. Lots of change there as they go through developing something, but it's all pretty well documented and it moves relatively slowly. And then through strange machinations, I ended up in the animation industry,
Hmm.
actually working at Disney as they were shifting from, a 2D to 3D to computer-based systems, trying to build reliability there. And nothing prepared me for how fast and how intense the change was in a motion picture production situation. Uh, Honestly, any motion picture, but with animation, you've got so many people involved. You have to
Right.
turn that aircraft carrier really fast to make that
Yeah.
work. My job was to get people through these changes as a unified team, ready to take on the next challenge. And, you know, what I see, over the past few years, I've been looking back and seeing what have I learned from my experience in dealing with all this change. Because I'm just not as afraid of it as I used to be, and I'm really good at someone coming in saying we're doing a 180, and my going, okay, here, let's take some notes and figure out where to go. Um, so I wanted to figure out from my own experience, and I also am just a huge student of leadership and very passionate about learning more about teams and how to work towards excellence. Um, so, anyways, I've put this together into a little program approach that I call the big buy-in, to where if we can get our team to buy in, we're almost unstoppable. And that really consists of three things. And this is what I talk about in the talk. First one is a shared vision. The second one is psychological safety. And the third one I call embracing dichotomy. Now, none of these are original to me. This is stuff that's been going on. If you listen to Simon Sinek, he talks a lot about the why, and shared vision is shared purpose is pretty much the same thing. Psychological safety, a lot of people are talking about more and more. Um, uh, if you hear from Adam Grant's podcasts, things like that, Brene Brown talks about things like that. And embracing dichotomy, I really hadn't heard people talking about, but I am now in certain different ways of saying it. So this has been out there. I'm just trying to repackage it in a way that made sense to me and hopefully helps people as leaders move forward. And part of what I say is leaders aren't just someone on an org chart who leads. Anyone is a leader if you care about the people around you and want them to succeed. And that's also kind of stealing from Simon Sinek. He's very much of the, if your leadership isn't providing you the environment or the culture you want, be a leader yourself. Be the person who wants to make sure the person to your left and the person to your right have the opportunity to advance and move forward.
That's a great point.
Just let me just touch on those 3 points quickly, because it's very easy to look at them and think it's all touchy-feely, let's be nice to people. But this is stuff that really actually has demonstrated, and through academic papers, through research studies, actual improved return on investment. This isn't HR stuff. This is CFO stuff.
Right.
Really, it's
Right.
all stuff, because if you're in a position of leadership, you should be aware. And
Yep.
what I find builds this togetherness in a team and builds these relationships is just really when people are seen.
Right.
And this is sort of a framework to deal with that. When you have a shared purpose, a shared vision, then everybody knows why you're there. And it's not your tasks. It's not our purpose is to schedule best so that other people know what's coming down the way. It's to know why we're scheduling, What's the big purpose? You've worked in animation. I've worked in animation. Sometimes when you jump in, the best thing is we've got a director's vision. We want to get out to the world. That's the
Right.
purpose. So when conflicts come up, if we step back and look at that, we can all see we're heading towards the same place on the map.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
Psychological safety, like I say, that's being talked about a lot now. And it's really about creating an environment where uh, people are not punished for making a mistake or saying
Right.
something wrong or going, I don't understand. And I've heard recently it's out there enough now that people are taking it to an extreme where, if someone says, no, I think that's wrong, it's like, oh, you're challenging my psychological safety. It's like, no, it's not that everybody's right. It's
Yeah.
that you get to say that and your team supports you. They're not embarrassing you, they're not shaming anyone.
Yeah.
And that opens up gates of freedom and that allows that teamwork to build. Um,
Yeah.
and the other thing, embracing dichotomy, uh, to me, I learned this when I started in animation, and I see it happen in aerospace and in other places too. But when I started in animation, people would ask what it was about, and I'm like, it's half factory, half art. And the
Yes.
thing is,
Yes.
you can't have the art without the factory, and you can't
Yep.
have the factory without the art.
Yeah.
Um, some people's job is more one than the other,
Right.
but they have to acknowledge both need to exist for them to move ahead.
Right.
I think it's Jim Collins who talks about it in a book as the tyranny of the and the benefit of the or. It's like, is it efficiency or is it innovation?
Yeah.
It's got to be
Yeah.
this or that. And it's like you can't be this or that. You have to be both. It has to be and that's
Yeah.
not easy. That's not an easy place to live. Just
Yeah.
like other uncertainty, that's an uncertain place to be.
Well,
But
yeah. If I could just jump in for a second,
yeah, yeah, it's hard
because
to get me to stop talking. So just
no, it's great stuff, Tony. But you and I again, we've been in the entertainment world for a long time, and around movies and television and all that. And what I always was amazed, it's like a village where everyone's bringing like something else to the table, and without each other, they can't get the project done. But they're all from almost different tribes sometimes. You've got engineering, and then even in the engineers, there might be 20 or 30 and the specialists in there. And
yeah,
then you've got a producer and a project manager and a production manager and some coordinators, sort of project managing as best possible. Then you've got maybe, again, as you mentioned, a director or the creator who's sometimes changing the script, every third day. Oh, I had this idea last night. And so yeah, I often said it's like we're trying to build a hand tooled, hand built Maserati for one customer. And that customer wakes up every third day going, I don't like the stitching on the seats. Could you change that for me? You know, hey, Tony, change the color of the stitching. And while you're doing that, somebody, I don't like the seats at all. Just throw them away. Well, we just spent like $30,000 on the seats. Yeah, but my wife saw this pair of seats in another car. We want that now. Like it's iterations of customization. And the other point I wanted to make was I remember a production manager showing me literally he still had this napkin sketch for a script, and we were watching the early boards for this movie, and none of the jokes were landing in the room. Like the writing was not on point. The drawings, the concept drawings were just and I looked at him and I said, this is like a 30 or $40 million part of the production. And he said, they all look like this at the beginning. Don't worry. Because he'd been through several. So he said, this thing's
yeah,
going to get whittled away at. He said, it's not even going to look anything like this 2 or 3 years from now when we finish. But there it was, that thing, like he was used to the uncertainty of that. I was not. I remember in my early days looking at it going, we're going to build the CN Tower, but we've got this idea with balsa sticks and popsicle sticks and glue, you know what I mean? And in the end, look at that. It's concrete and it's got rebar and so some people can't handle that. They just want to go to a 9 to 5 ish kind of world and say, I'm going to plug in and plug out. And there are
yeah,
other folks like yourself who have to manage all of the gray zones, all of the that's not charted out on a linear graph yet, but when we get there, we'll figure it out. We're going to do everything we can to make sure the liability when we get there is smaller than it is right now. Um,
yeah.
but it's
I
it's a
I
different
I
kind of headspace.
I think that's it's sometimes hard to remember the the chaos that can happen in production. I
Yeah.
was having a morning, I think it was Monday of this week, I think. It seems like a year ago, but it was Monday of this week where I had to go to an office, a post-production house at noon. Okay, I can do that. I have two meetings in the morning. It's the other side of town. So, the tram was down. It didn't run that I'd planned on. The two meetings shifted around. Everything changed. I sat down for one meeting. Zoom isn't going to work. Can you do a call? I can do a call. I can't. Everything was changing. And when I got to the post production house, I said, it's just a production morning. Everything's changing, but we're going to be fine. We're going to get there.
Yes.
Um, and certain people can understand that. But
Yeah.
as you described, some people are like, yes, I get that happens, but I don't want to be a part of that. And I'm going to stay in this
Right.
job where I don't want to be a part of it. Well, part of leadership is being able to speak to both of those
Yes.
tribes. You
Yeah.
know, when I first got to Disney from aerospace, I think one of the reasons they hired me was because I could manage technical projects and technical teams,
Yeah.
but I had a non-professional background in theater and the arts and music. So I could speak with the artists and the production
Right.
people. So I've called myself a translator my whole life in that I
Yeah.
can, speak between arts and technology back when they used to be separate. And
Yes.
still, you translate to business or to strategy or to HR. You need
Yeah.
to understand the language they're speaking a little bit to make sure that everybody is, once again, seen and heard the way
Yeah.
they're supposed to be. So that person who is there to do this one job and I want to do it and I want to go home, that's absolutely fine. Let's just be clear about what that means
Yeah.
to the people you're relating to and to this project as a whole.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was thinking it, but just as we were about to say, seen and heard, and those are the words in my head as well. People like to feel like their contribution is being registered and recognized, right? Otherwise, they're
Yeah,
like, why do I even open my mouth? No one
yeah,
cares. No one listens. Okay, I'm just going to punch the clock, right? So, and I think a leader has that ability to turn that on or off. You've got to invite it and then also support it and foster that sort of thing, that collaboration. And again, at certain points of production, it's not a good idea to bring another new idea. You kind of go through that phase of like, here's where we're going, let's execute. And,
yeah,
and this is what I think a lot of people don't understand about the creative process is that it's not always linear. It's linear with lots of, forks in the road kind of thing. And you have to
mhm,
manage those forks. But, anyways, look, I
yeah.
want to pivot for a second. I know I believe you're talking at the South by Southwest London conference. Am I right? Do you want to talk about that for a bit?
I'm hoping to talk at South by Southwest
Okay.
London. Um,
Yeah.
it's an offshoot of South by Southwest, so it's super diverse and super interesting.
Yeah.
And I want to talk more about this process and things that I've done. But I can do my Fear and Loathing in the Age of AI talk again,
Yeah.
and I've submitted that to be perfectly honest. But what
Yeah.
happens with South by Southwest London is you submit a proposal and the public votes on it.
Ah,
So right now that voting's going on. So that goes through the 23rd of December. And then we'll find out after that who's going to be in it. So what I've submitted this time is a talk about navigating the change when it's your turn. So
mm,
I've been the guy who's helped lead people through change, help them get used to change, help them build teams amidst that. And then my industry gets turned upside down. I go from, high level job, running a division, things like that, to a couple of years of not being able to do that and trying
yeah.
to find other things. And really, I think a lot of what we're talking about here, I've been I've worked mostly with teams and I've been talking about teams, but the reality is a lot of what I'm talking about applies to people, and change is happening to people individually in their careers, in their jobs, in their lives.
Mm,
Um, and so I kind of want to do a personal take on it. So the change expert who had to change, talking about reinvention in the age of upheaval. Um, and if I can, just to be a little bit self-serving here, As I said, this is being voted on the
Ah,
South by Southwest London website. So
yeah,
if anyone listening wants to hear more about this or wants to join me in trying to spread this message and trying to make sure more people are seen and heard, or more people know how to be seen and heard, go to the South by Southwest London website. It's what they do, that SXSW, South
yeah.
by Southwest. That's very
To-
clever.
Tony,
SXXWLondon.com.
I'll post some links up when
Okay,
we publish
great.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah, so people
you
can just.
register, and there are different tracks. Right now, I'm under the Society Rewired track.
Okay.
And like I said, it's the change expert who had to change, reinvention in the age of upheaval. If you search for one of those words, it'll come up. And yeah, if you'd vote for me, I'd really appreciate it. And I really want to, well, this would be a great way to help continue getting this message out, but I'm going to keep continuing no matter what
Yeah.
as I go through things. Again,
Mike,
that's up through the 23rd of December. So coming up here.
excellent. I will get the news out. I had a thought while you were talking about other titles, as maybe build more speeches, but like the astronaut that went to Disney, or I don't know, it's just
No, that's
running through my head.
that's
NASA scientist leaves for entertainment, better entertainment than shuttles, and yeah,
one of the stories I like to bring up when I talk about, how do you have you had a lot of change in your life? I actually knew you at one point when I left a
way back.
company to go to China.
That's right. I remember
And
that.
I
Yeah,
went to go work on a movie. And between my getting the job offer, and you had to spend some time getting a visa and flying over
yeah,
there. And by the time I landed in China, the script was thrown out, the directors were fired, and new directors were brought in, and
yeah,
everything was on hold, which
yeah,
isn't that unusual in the animation industry. But here I am on a whole new continent, pretty
yeah,
sure I have a job, but not sure what it is. And
yeah.
yeah, and you can't just hit the ground trying to figure out what you do. There's a team of production people that I need to make sure have a sense of psychological safety, have a sense of
Yes,
purpose, and can understand the dichotomy of, yes, we want to get this done, but we want to make sure we get something that we're proud of, that's a story we want to tell to get out there. So
yeah. Yeah, I've often thought a large part of leading a team, there's a little bit of a counseling kind of role, where you do have to inquire as to what people want on the team, what are their goals and interests, and it's not
yeah,
about you or the company. They want some portion of their goals and interests to be part of the direction, if possible.
yeah,
But to not ask it leaves a gap. And one of my other points to an executive years ago, I said, you have to communicate regularly, because if you don't, they'll make up some other story. Like,
uh,
you know, craft the narrative, give it to them. They're going to make whatever they would of it, but don't give them silence, because
that
in the
is
silence, they will start to build
yeah.
conspiracies. Not all of them, but, it just takes one. I think they're
Eh,
thinking this. Whoa, really? Now you've got three, right? Now there's four, right? So you have to craft
yeah,
a
you
message
say
and then
not all
deliver
of
it.
them, but I think all human beings with an absence of data start to tell stories to themselves and things
Exactly.
like that. That's taking me back to Brene Brown and Adam Grant again about,
Yeah.
uh, filling in the if and I've done that plenty of times where I see something's coming and it's like, I'd rather tell you people what's coming and tell you what we know and why we're making these choices.
Yeah.
And then it's once again going back to, do people matter? If
Yeah.
someone feels they matter, then we can move ahead. Then it may not be in perfect alignment with them, but they know that you see them as a person and they're still going to help you move forward in a way that makes sense to everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, look, Tony, I want to thank you for being on the show. If people need to find you, LinkedIn, I would imagine, is a good spot. Is there any other method that helps find Tony Matthews online?
Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn as Tony Matthews. I also have a website that I'm putting up. It's up there now, but I'm still figuring out how it looks best. It's tony-matthews.com.
Okay, great.
Tony-Matthews.com. Talks a little about production and transformation and inspiration, sort of my things.
Yeah. Excellent. Good. Well, thank you again. Good luck with the upcoming SXX SXSW. That's a mouthful. And hopefully we can get you some more votes and get you in
Yeah.
as a speaker there. That would be fantastic.
Well, thank you so much for asking me to chat. This is just great. And I'm passionate about this, so I love
Yeah.
every chance I get to talk.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And again, I think if as this all these changes keep happening, it's people like yourself that have it's not new. Change has actually been part of your career and your lifestyle to be able to jump here and there. And in my mind, I always used to joke with students like imagine you're like a Marine behind enemy lines, like and you've got your weapons not working, but you've got a can opener and a pencil. What are you like? Something you just have to innovate, right? You have to use your wits and your resources, and then you have to build people around you to come along for whatever mission you're on, so to speak. So that quite often the way I see people like yourself, it's like again, I often think MacGyver, right? Like you're put into this situation, you have to get 8 or 10 disparate parties to get to the table, and then track it and build something amazing at the other side. And there'll be pain points along the way, but when you look back on it, it's like, wow, how did you guys do that? Well, do you want the whole story or a bit of the story? Because it's a
Yeah,
lot of work, right? It's a lot of
how
work.
much time? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, Tony. Hopefully we can cross paths at some point in the future.
Yeah, I do hope so. We'll see you
All right.
soon.
Take care.